Let me put you on game. Don't listen to people who lose or you'll do the same. Stop talking to people who don't give a f*** what you saying. Stop spending your money on weed, go hop on a plane. Stop pointing the finger.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Wealth podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest with us, Zak Warren. He is the owner of Pearl Health Clinic and Pearl Group Homes here in Idaho Falls.
You got it.
And he's got some other things going on as well that we'll get into. But first off, I want to just thank you for taking the time to come today. I know you're super busy and these things aren't always convenient being in the middle of the day, but I appreciate you making the time for it.
Happy to do it. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. So we want to get into your story, kind of how did you get to where you're at today? So where did life start for you? Did you grow up here in Idaho Falls or?
No, I'm a transplant. Okay. So born in Minnesota, raised in Indiana, spent my kind of formative years in northern Indiana.
Okay.
Little tiny town about 30 minutes out of South Bend, which is the home of Notre Dame.
Okay.
So Notre Dame
that's
fan.
Probably the only area I know there.
Sure. I grew up in like an Amish community. So there were horse and buggies on the streets all the time.
Really?
Classmates of mine came from the Amish background. So a really unique small town Americana culture.
That is very unique.
Yeah.
So they make good furniture over there?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
that's good.
That's great that you know that. I spent a summer after my senior year of high school working in a factory.
Really?
Amish adjacent, we'll call it. It wasn't directly with the Amish, but yes, they make great furniture.
My father-in-law just bought a bunch of furniture from them a few years ago when they furnished their house. And it honestly is way better furniture than you can buy at like a furniture store.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They put their work into it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so did you grow up? When did you leave there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Indiana, and I went to Purdue University my freshman year of college. And part of my story is I didn't meet my dad until I was 18.
Really?
So I met my dad at 18, raised by primarily a single mom, teenage mom. She was 15 when I was born.
Wow.
So she had her series of growing up and pains, and I was right along for that ride. And so that certainly shaped me. And then meeting my dad at 18 influenced that I went to college in Minnesota, small liberal arts college in St.Paul, Concordia University in St. Paul.
Okay.
Got my bachelor's in psychology. It's where I met my wife, my college sweetheart. She's an absolute doll.
What was your interest in psychology? Why'd you choose that?
That's a great question. I think a couple of reasons. One, obviously, in my own life journey, trying to figure out my own stuff was part of it.
Yeah.
But I was always fascinated with how people think and how they engage the world, and being very curious about that. That was kind of a natural, for me, it was between that. I have a theology minor. I have a Christian faith background. So it was between that and some kind of church work. Okay. And really ended up being drawn to the psychology side of things in the end.
Cool.
Yeah.
So being raised by a single mom, having you at the age of 15.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like?
A lot of change. We moved around quite a bit. I always tell people I believe my mom did the best that she could with what she had.
Yeah.
And yet there was still quite a bit of change. It wasn't really until I was 12. So I was born in Minnesota. We lived in North Dakota for a time, then moved to Indiana. And it was when I was 12, she would have been in her late 20s.
Yeah.
And things kind of settled down. And that's where I really feel like I took root. I really say that's where those were my formative years. I got into athletics and sports. I had a lot of outlets. I was a pretty naturally, gifted or talented kid. I was in theater, drama, choir. So I had a lot of outlets in school. So the social connections was where I found a lot of my identity as a kid.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so meeting your dad at 18, what was that experience like? Were you searching him out, or how did that happen?
Yeah, great question. You're a great interviewer. I love the way you ask these questions. This is going to roll right out of me. If you ever want a second career as a therapist, come talk to me. It was he contacted me.
Okay.
He had been faithful in paying child support all my childhood, and when you turn 18, that mechanism stops. And so he kind of went through a bit of a crisis himself, and he reached out, and it was Memorial Day weekend. I just graduated or was graduating high school. Drove down, met him for the first time in a cafe. It was pretty surreal because what I remember is having quite a few fantasy ideas about what my dad was like and what he would be like. And what was fascinating is how much I was like him, having never met him. Certain mannerisms, I certainly looked like him. And it was a good start. And that was at the advent of email. So we were emailing back and forth.
Okay.
And I ended up living with him the summer after my freshman year of college.
Really?
And I had 5 siblings that I never knew about.
Wow.
Who I'm close with now.
Yeah.
And that's pretty awesome.
That's so cool. Close in age to you?
The oldest is 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And then I'm going to butcher so there's 5 siblings and the youngest just turned 32 and I'm 44.
Okay.
I think so.
It's not too big of a gap.
And they're twins. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a pretty powerful dynamic, a lot to work through interpersonally. And I'm really glad we did because we repaired our relationship. That's cool. Then he died 15 years ago. Wow. Sudden heart attack. He was gone.
Wow.
So the fact that we did that work was important for me.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that he reached out.
Was your mom supportive of that?
Yeah, she always was. You know, I think there have been moments where it was hard for her to watch.
Yeah.
Because she's always been a champion for me. I'm the oldest. I have 8 siblings. And I think there were times when it was hard for her, but she always encouraged it for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the other dynamic too, where a situation like that happens and maybe the one parent isn't supportive of that.
Right.
Because it is hard, especially raising you till you're 18 and then seeing you go
doing all
live.
the work.
Yeah. And then feeling like you're going to go live with the other
Yeah.
parent too. So that's cool that she was still supportive of that journey and that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
So where did life take you after living with him at 18?
Yeah. So living with him for a little bit, really growing up the way that I did with my mom, one of the elements was just, we were kind of in and out of poverty throughout my childhood. Grew up in a single wide trailer at one point, latchkey kid in the, late 80s, early 90s. So I was kind of on my own a lot. So at some point in high school, I remember thinking to myself, my stepdad at the time was getting up and working in the factories, 5 a.m., taking his lunch pail. And I thought to myself, I don't want that life.
Yeah.
So college was a priority for me. It was a way for me to get out of, and probably didn't fully know it at the time, but I was just like, I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. So I got to go to college. I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
So pretty dedicated to getting my college degree, changed my major a few times. All the while kind of working out that relationship. So I wanted to finish college and I ended up going to the same university that my dad went to.
Really?
Yeah.
What is his degree in?
Interesting. He was a pastor.
Oh, okay.
So there was a scandalous part to my entry into the world.
Okay.
He obviously wasn't a pastor at the time. He was a college student, but he ended up becoming a pastor. And then he left the pastorate for a while, kind of after we got together. And he ended up doing a few different things before he passed away. He never had a career after that, after becoming a pastor.
But in that was like something that you were kind of, the interest in being a pastor, studying that in theology in school, I was looking for the word.
Yeah.
Did that come from after meeting him or did you have the thoughts prior to that?
No, I had thoughts prior to that. I was raised in a Christian family, a religious family. And I tell people I came to know Jesus really when I was 17. I had a spiritual encounter. My life was transformed. And so I identify strongly with my Christian faith.
Yeah.
Meeting him certainly influenced how that kind of carried out early in my life, going to that same university, studying similar type of things. Never wanted to be a pastor, knew that wasn't really my forte or the direction I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he influenced it to some degree.
That's cool.
Because the way I think about it now, I'm 44. At 18, I was still subconscious. Here's the counselor in me coming out, right?
Yeah.
Subconsciously, I really still wanted dad's approval.
Oh, yeah.
So there was an element in which I was like, well, I'm going to figure this out and try to make it work. And in the end, going a different direction. But I'm sure that influenced it to some degree.
For sure. Did being a business owner, was that intriguing? Were you thinking about that at all when you were going to school?
No, I like that. I love that question. So part of why the story of meeting my dad is important, because when my wife and I met in college, she finished up school. We got married, had our first kid. I finished up school. And we moved out here and I met my mentor, my longtime mentor.
Okay.
So having met my dad so late in life, I was still looking for someone to kind of foster that.
Yeah.
And his name was Dr. Tana, rest in peace. He was a longtime community member, and he interviewed me. And it's a funny story. we flew out here. It was a February.
Okay.
So February 2002. Cold as ice, right?
You say it's like one of the worst times to visit. Yeah.
And I had 5 or 6 interviews lined up, different agencies. With a bachelor's degree back then, you could do good work, make fair money. And so I was trying to feel out all my options.
Yeah.
Well, he was the most significant interview. Everyone else was in their office, 20, 30 minutes, hi, bye, goodbye, and everything's fine. He took me to dinner, got into my life story. It ended up being a 4 or 5 hour interview.
Wow.
And it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. He'd taken me to his home, which was a beautiful home. And we finished up the interview, and I didn't give him a decision. And knowing what I know about him now, he's not a man who took no lightly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give him a decision. And I'm walking to my car. It's February. Snow's coming down. It's freezing cold. He's got a cool story too. He was from Malaysia, Hindu priest, converted to Christianity.
Wow.
So anyways, he didn't like the cold. But he's hanging his head out the door, and I hadn't given him a decision. Go ahead, make your mistakes. Come back and see me when you're ready. Needless to say, I ended up signing up with him, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Having him as a mentor throughout my career is really what got me interested in starting business.
Yeah. And
put me on the trajectory that I've been on.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So was he running his own office when you were interviewing for him?
Yeah, so when we met, he was running a nonprofit mental health clinic here in town. Okay. He and my still colleague, Steve Denagi, started this back in, I want to say, 87. There was a rash of suicides in Southeast Idaho, and at the time, nobody was really doing any of that kind of work.
Yeah.
And he was living and working down in American Falls. Through the YMCA, they contacted him and said, hey, can you help us out? And so they started this nonprofit organization, and that's who I started my career for. 22-year-old, didn't know which way was up, but he believed in me, and it was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where'd you go from there? You start on with him 2000. That's 2002.
Yeah, April Fool's Day, 2002.
Really?
Yeah.
I love how you remember these days too.
Well, there were times. So a mentor relationship is not always an easy one, and there were times when I thought, "Am I the fool in this situation?" Yeah. So finishing up with a bachelor's degree, 22-year-old, didn't really know which way was up, but had all the confidence in the world. And he put me into leadership right away.
Really?
And there were a lot of difficult learning moments in that relationship. But one of the most important ones really was about learning to know what you don't know. I loved my work. I loved working with kiddos and families, but recognizing that my work had limitations because my knowledge was limited. So through his encouragement, I applied to the Idaho State University Masters of Counseling program and was accepted in 2005, finished my degree in 2007.
Sweet.
And that was an important, pivotal educational step because first of all, I was the first one in my family to graduate, even with an undergrad.
Wow.
So to add that master's degree was a significant leap forward from my family background. On my dad's side, it's a little bit different story, but I consider my family of origin my mom's side.
Yeah.
Blue collar folks, wonderful, love my family. But education wasn't emphasized.
Yeah. Did before you met your dad, kind of going back, because you saying education wasn't emphasized on that side of the family where you were raised and spent most of your time. Were you had still planned to go to college? Did you have any mentors, or who were you looking up to at that time before you met your dad?
Boy, that's a great question. I think I was searching for one. I don't know that I ever had one in middle school or high school. Getting into sports, I think coaches maybe tried but I never really latched on to one, never really connected with one prior to meeting my dad and Dr. Tana. The last stepdad I had growing up was a wonderful guy, rest in peace, but didn't really ever fully connect with him.
Yeah.
And so, no, I wouldn't say I had a mentor until my 20s, really.
The only reason I ask is, like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think about kids that grow up in either poverty or in rougher neighborhoods. And the reason a lot of the times it's not that they don't want to be successful, they do, but like, who do they have to look up to?
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that there's other alternative routes other than maybe going to school. And if school's not their thing, then they're like, well, then what's the other resort?
Sure. Sure.
And so I was just curious if you had a mentor that you looked up to when you were growing up at all. But you get your master's degree and then you're still working for...
Yeah, Dr. Tana.
Dr. Tana, okay.
Doing nonprofit work. throughout our relationship, we were both pretty temperamental. I was a stubborn young guy, and he was a veteran that kind of knew how to do it. And sometimes we'd really clash.
Yeah.
All the while doing good work. And there was a time when the nonprofit shut down, changed directions. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And my wife and I, we were considering a move to Boise. This was in the spring and summer of 2008. Looking back, the worst possible time to move. It was the peak of the market.
Yeah.
We had owned our own home, so we were going to sell it for what we thought would have been a nice profit. But Boise was obviously inflated at the time.
Yep.
That brief story is we were committed. I had a job over there. I was doing training, but they didn't give me a contract. Here's another lesson learned.
Yeah.
I'd been on the job for a week without a contract. By Friday, with no contract, I called my wife and said, I'm coming home. This is not working. I signed up with a buddy who had a clinic here. I worked with him for 6 months while Dr. Tana and I were developing all of the infrastructure for a for-profit outpatient mental health clinic, which is Pearl Health Clinic.
That's sweet. So you guys started that together.
Yeah. So it was organized in April 2008.
Okay.
And just because of all the insurance and paperwork requirements, I didn't come on board until January 1, 2009.
Okay.
And I came on as an investor in a specific division.
Okay.
So he was kind of giving me another opportunity to grow in leadership. And one of the best things that ever happened to me, my education, and my wife's folks were incredibly generous and helped us for a down payment on our first home.
Oh, cool.
We refied that, and I took that money and put it into the business.
Wow.
So I tell people two things: education and home ownership transformed the trajectory of my life in terms of financial opportunities.
I love that.
So put that into the business, and it flourished. We were blessed beyond measure. We had clients, staff. We grew. We were. You got a startup kind of situation. You know what this is like. Everybody's sharing one copier. There's 4 of us. We're putting desks together. We're writing policies. It was a lot of fun. Very enjoyable. I mean, no money coming in at the time, but but it's just like a bonding kind of experience when you're starting something up. And that was the genesis of Pearl Health Clinic, and it took off quickly. We went from there was 2 doctors, him, me, and 2 counselors and an assistant.
Wow.
And it blew up to 50 employees within a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I look back and probably similar to you, it's like you starting out, you're not going to make a lot of money when you start a business. But you look back, some of those are the funnest times when you're just bootstrapped and you're doing all the work and you're like, man, you remember when we were doing that? Right. So I think it's funny. And you look back and like, man, why was I doing that? We weren't making like any money, but it was so fun. So year one, like what was your guys' why start Pearl Health Clinic? What was your vision with it? What was your mission?
That's a great question, because Dr. Tana was not a detail-oriented person, but he was very relational. And though it wasn't articulated, what we rallied around was a commitment to our clients. The clients came first, and sometimes to the detriment of the company. We had practices of writing off services, providing pro bono services, but it generated incredible goodwill with our clients, which generated great word of mouth, which then grew the business. And so people in mental health, if they get into it, they should know it's not to make a lot of money. You can, but that motivation will get found out real quick. You really got to be committed to your clients.
Yeah.
So as a group of clinicians who really rallied around that mentality, seeing it lived out by the leadership and wanting to participate in it.
I love that. Like when I look at a lot, like talking to a lot of business owners and looking at business owners, like the ones that are successful, watching your bottom line and your P&L is important, but sometimes you got to take that out of it. And if you can put people first, your clients first, like I'm a true believer of the more good you put into the world, the more good you'll get out of the world.
Sure. And
so I think when you have that mentality of we're going to put our clients first, sometimes at the detriment of our P&L, writing off stuff, we're not making money on things, but knowing that, we're putting good out into the world and eventually it's going to come back in some way. Opportunities are going to get created.
Well, and what was great about it too, and that's a great summary, I think you're right. And what was great about it too is as we grew and all the growing pains that come with it, we really started to sense a need to shift from putting our clients first to putting our staff first. So now between my two companies, 150 plus people, having learned some of those lessons in 2013, 2014, I think we have a model that really shifted well. And then by putting our people first, they can put the clients first, and it multiplies our impact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, there's a point in time where you transition from I'm kind of in that phase of first we were so concerned about our client experience because we were focused on dealing with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're running a team and we've got 20 agents. So it's now our clients are now our agents because they're part of our company. And so having that shift of, okay, we got to keep that same mentality and run it into our company from running our company standpoint is so important. I think a lot of people miss that. What was year one like for you guys?
A lot of late nights.
I know it was a little bit ago.
Late nights. A fair amount of uncertainty. My wife and kids and I were the ones cleaning the facility. Looking back, I think it was a lot of credibility building.
Yeah.
When I have a terrible story that I'm going to tell you, and you can decide what to do with it. But because we were the cleaning people, there were times when the bathrooms were incredibly unpleasant.
Yeah.
But for the staff to know and be aware that that was a task that I was doing, I didn't think about it like that at the time. Yep. I was trying to teach my kids some lessons about hard work.
Absolutely.
But hearing some of their reactions to those kinds of late nights and long hours and dedication, I think made a difference in building my credibility, not only as a clinician. I always tell people I'm a counselor first and a businessman second. The clinician part of me was growing leaps and bounds through supervision and working with my colleagues and peers. But the leadership part of me is what really took root in that first year. We did become profitable fairly quickly, but it took, it takes a ton of work and uncertainty, and you got to push through that. One of the things I learned, my wife is a wonderful partner, been married 22 years. She and I have very different risk tolerances, and entrepreneurs always have to gauge their own, and if they're in partnered relationships, their partner's risk tolerance. And so I had a higher risk tolerance, and we were pretty fortunate. I think we made money about 6 months in.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Took a lot of hustle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you shared it was the late nights. It was you cleaning toilets and cleaning bathrooms and doing that, because when you're starting a business, you're everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're the janitor, you're the marketing, you're the sales, you're the finance, you're everything. Eventually you get people in those places, but you got to be willing to take on those roles.
Yeah.
And I think establishing the credibility, the best form of leadership is leading by example and leading the way. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to tell these people that to do a certain thing, but you're not doing it or not willing to do it, it's really hard for them to want to give you credibility and say, let's listen to Zach.
Yeah.
Zach won't even do that. Why should I?
Right.
So I think that's super powerful for a lot of business owners to realize. Where do you feel at what point did you feel like you really hit? Because a lot of businesses hit kind of the exponential growth curve. You're building, and then all of a sudden it's wow, this is really, really working. Do you feel like at what point do you feel like you hit there? Because I know you're there. You're definitely surpassed that. But at what point, what year do you think it took?
It actually came probably after one of my lowest stretches of my career.
Okay.
I had an incredible mentor in Dr. Tana. And like I said, he was emotional at times. And he and I would go back and forth. And it was about 2013, there were some changes to our business structure. And he had to make a business decision, and he cut me out of a part of it. And it was incredibly painful. Not only did he cut me out of part of it, I was in running my division, I had a team of 5 leaders that I was directly mentoring and leading. And one of them came to me and had this great write-up and proposal saying, Zach, we're missing some key things. I thought it was beautiful. I essentially promoted him to my position, and Dr. Tana did not support it. And so we clashed big time over that. And between 2013 and 2015 was one of the hardest stretches of my leadership, professional career. Had me second guessing myself, doubting myself. I thank God because Dr. Tana kind of came around and saw my commitment to our vision, my skills and abilities as a leader. And he was getting ready to retire. And he approached me and said, "Hey, we need to develop a transition plan. Are you interested in buying the whole practice?"
Oh, wow.
So it was pretty remarkable that for someone to be that dedicated to me, a guy who, didn't meet his dad till he was 18, that despite those difficult couple of years, to come back around and say, "No, this is the right move." So late 2016 into 2017, he got really sick. And my wife and I and Dr. Denegi, he didn't have any children. He had adopted children. And he was very dedicated to teens, and his adopted children were really troubled teenagers that had now become adults, and they were all at the time in prison. So they were unavailable. So my wife and I and Steve Denegi, we cared for him while he was in and out of the hospital. And during that time, we developed a buy-sell agreement on Pearl Health Clinic. And it's just fascinating, even sitting here today, to think about and his illness had nothing to do with his mental faculties or capabilities. It was physical health related. But we were in the ICU, and he said, "We got to get this done." So we signed it. 2 days later, he was in hospice and died 3 days later.
Wow.
So to me, it was a remarkable moment, bittersweet.
Yeah.
In which it felt like he was hanging on to get this
Just
done.
to get it done.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's my view of the whole experience. And from there, things really started to accelerate. We grieved and we mourned, and then the business exploded. So really out of some of the lowest moments came the trajectory of incredible growth and transformation.
There's Jim Rohn always says, or he says that spring always follows winter. You're always going to have a winter, but it tends to be like you get those growth seasons right after winter.
Yeah.
He's like, and it's happened for centuries, and it will always happen.
Yeah.
Spring will always follow winters.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's cool hearing stories like that, kind of just hits me even harder thinking that, it's like right after your hardest times, hold on.
Yeah.
Because you're about to potentially see a lot of growth.
Yeah.
If you do hold on. But a lot of people kind of give up during those hard times, especially when they're running a business.
Yep.
And it's like you're right almost to that exponential growth curve. So that was 2017.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. So what was the growth trajectory from there? Do you remember how many employees you had at that time?
Oh, let's see. At the time, I know I can give you the financial number. We were probably about 50 to 60 employees at that time.
Okay.
Based on what I remember about the financials. And one of my big fears was in the mental health world, Dr. Tana was a kind of a larger than life figure. So I'm like, are these people going to follow me? Is Pearl going to go away with him? So I had to acknowledge those fears to myself through that. And thankfully, during that last year of his life, I had really gained a lot of respect, trust, and credibility with other key leaders.
Yeah.
So I think that was an important part of the success that came after. So 2017 to 2020, right before the pandemic, we grew. We basically doubled in size in 3 years. And part of the element of this is not only was it Pearl Health Clinic, but Pearl Group Homes. They were two separate entities, and I had always had a stronger passion on the mental health side. So the Pearl Group Homes had no leader, and so I took it on as kind of a honor to him.
Yeah.
And so by the end of 2020, what happened during those 3 years was we moved from I don't know what it's called when companies, when the founder dies, that the whole vision kind of dies.
Yeah.
We had the opposite thing happen. As Dr. Tana passed on, we had a group of people who stepped up. And I am surrounded by some incredibly talented, committed professionals who want to move this in a new direction. And it was refreshing. There was people stepping up in leadership. There was people committed to growth. And in 2020, 19, we were so big, we were wrestling with space issues. We have a beautiful 28,000 square foot building in Ammon, right off of 17th.
Yeah.
And we were busting at the seams. So one of my psychiatrists at the time said, "Hey, have you guys ever considered some outside consultation?" And we hadn't.
Yeah.
We'd never had this problem before.
Yeah.
And we committed to working with a group out of Boise, and we did we went away for a weekend up in Ketchum, Idaho, and we came away with an articulated mission, vision, and values.
Wow.
And that was one of the best investments we ever made.
Sure.
Because we moved away from one individual being so highly influential to these concepts that people could rally around. So I'll say this even now. If I die on the way home tonight, Pearl Health Clinic and Pearl Group Homes will persist because those mission, vision, and values are in place.
Yeah.
And I was a skeptic. I love the entrepreneurial stuff. I love that, those late nights, that gritty, small. And when you grow to 100, 150 employees, you have to give up some of that.
Oh, yeah.
You got to put things in place to support all of the people, not just the things I like. So there's been a mourning process for that creative side, but all in all, a lot of those decisions really helped us. There's more to it, but that's kind of
and that's interesting. It shows one thing that you guys shared a great vision with your employees up to that point to have, because that's the biggest thing for employees to step up. It's like they have to be bought into the vision, and for a leader to pass on and then wanting to step up and carry out that vision. It's like he must have been a good leader in sharing his vision, and likewise you as well. How has your leadership developed over the years? Because majoring in psychology, it's not it's not like leadership by any means or anything like that. Yeah. So I'm sure you had to learn how to lead. What are some of the lessons you've learned leading and managing 150 people?
Sure. I'm glad you asked that. Because I'm a firm believer in leaders are made and not born, because I wasn't one. Didn't have the structure and background growing up. In sports, I was more the good athlete, not the good team captain.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of hard lessons, concepts and ideas basic to that a lot of people would assume would be known. Integrity, being a man of your word, doing and saying those kinds of things, and learning some hard lessons in my early 20s about effective leadership that way. And balancing the idea of I want my people to like me, but sometimes I have to make hard decisions, and learning to make those hard decisions. So having Dr. Tan as a mentor and having somebody there who could push me and challenge me in those ways was really critical to my development of leadership. And I would say for anybody who's looking for a way to sharpen their leadership is get under the tutelage of somebody who knows your field and who can kind of guide you and help you see. Something we do in counseling is kind of help people see their blind spots.
Yeah. Do you have a mentor right now? Mentor?
No, I don't. It's a huge gap in my life. It is. I know. At 44, I've learned some things, but I still have a lot to learn. Yeah. And I've actually been lamenting about this to some of my colleagues, because it's like I haven't found that. I've gone to some networking events. I've gotten some nuggets along the way, but I haven't found that relationship that is in any way similar. And I'd love to find that person.
Yeah. So, and I think I'm a big advocate for finding a mentor, and we have a business coach that we talk to, and even just running a business, it's just nice to have a third party that's not invested or has an ulterior motive for my company. It's just he can give me untailored advice or what's the word? But basically, I don't have to worry about him having an alternative motive in my company, and he's going to give me advice, because for me, he just wants me to succeed so I can continue to hire him as a coach. Yeah. And so I think it's so important to have somebody in your corner, and I'm sure you understand that, but it is hard to find that person.
It is. I have a great team around me, and they challenge me as a leader internally. Yeah. And there's that nice external objective voice that can say, what do you build enough? It's about the relationship. Yeah. You build enough of a relationship, and then that person can knock you upside the head verbally and go, what are you doing? You're missing the point here. Yeah. That I miss.
Yeah. That's, I wanted to touch two things I want to touch on too. And this is, so Pearl Health Clinic is focused on kind of mental health. Yeah. Right. There's been some changes in the mental health space. And every YouTube video I watch is sponsored by Better Health. What's your take on companies like Better Health?
Oh, you want my unfiltered opinion about that? It's I think it's the worst possible thing for mental health care.
Yeah.
I understand increasing access, but what we're missing is quality. There are very few quality pieces, quality controls in that space. And, when the pandemic hit, we adjusted. We had to do telehealth for a couple months and really even still now. But I'm a firm believer, and we believe internally, that the best work is done sitting next to someone face to face. Access to care is an issue, so it's addressed that part.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's addressing the quality, and I can speak as a firsthand consumer of it. Midway through the pandemic, I sought out some support that way. Awful experience. Got pushed around to 3 different providers, 25-minute session when I saw this. It was just a terrible experience. So, yeah, they're my competitor, but I don't see the quality there in any way. And I think ultimately that there will be a reckoning in that in our space for sure.
Yeah, because you're and companies see that, and I think they see the opportunity as trying to get to the masses. And you look at that like it's probably a bad example, but I look at it as like Rocket Mortgage.
Yeah,
it's like they're just masses. You can get a quick pre-qual, but when somebody sends us an offer and they're pre-qualified with Rocket Mortgage, holds very little weight because we're like,
sure,
we don't trust that Rocket Mortgage is actually going to close or do anything on time.
Yep.
Because they don't have the quality control.
Yep.
You miss that when you do something at scale.
Yes.
And so I think with something as tender and important as mental health, it's like,
yeah, we get candidates who've been working at BetterHelp the last year or whatever, and we move along because there's a certain and it's not unique to Pearl. It's really our whole profession needs to be committed to it. But at Pearl, there's an element in which we value the relationship so much because change doesn't happen unless the person I'm sitting next to believes and feels, and I believe and feel that they're capable of making that change, that I believe in them, and that they believe in themselves. And I just don't know that those things are promoted in any important way through that online space. Again, I get the access to care issue because we've had, unfortunately, a 4 or 5, 6 month wait list for a couple of years now. And yeah, from a business perspective, that's healthy and great. But from a human care perspective, it breaks my heart because it's not something before the pandemic. It's nothing we ever experienced, and so people are open to it now. We're just understaffed and underpaid really for what we want to be doing for people. Yeah,
I think the bright side or the one benefit of companies like Better Health is I think they are getting the word out pretty good that mental health is something that you should go talk to people about.
Sure,
and that you should seek out counseling and stuff like that because I think they have a lot of marketing dollars behind that. They're spreading the word about it.
Yeah.
So I think that is one benefit maybe is more people are seeking out the help. But I do think that, for somebody to get that true help, it needs to be more of a one-on-one situation.
Yeah.
Where do you see the mental health space right now? Is there, what's lacking in the mental health space?
It's a great question. Well, what we have found in about the last 18 months is I think there's a lack of qualified counselors. So we have been very successful in recruiting and retaining on the medical side. So Pearl Health Clinic is a multidisciplinary mental health clinic. And a lot of people tell me there's not really anyone like us in the state in terms of the array of services that we offer. We do pharmacological management, and we've got a team of medical professionals. We do psychological testing. We provide individual, group, family, and couples counseling. We do a lot of work with teenagers out in the community, young children as young as 4 years old.
Wow.
And with that robust array of services, we still have trouble recruiting and finding top quality mental health clinicians.
Wow.
So that I think is, the America, we know there's a physician shortage, but there's a real mental health provider shortage as well.
Really?
And so our efforts in recruiting have been incredibly challenging. And like I said, there are candidates, but some of them who come from that space, we're not interested in.
Yeah. Is it, so you think it's like just less people seeking out a degree in psychology and getting into the mental health, like counseling field?
That coupled with more people seeking care.
Okay.
So you've got a twofold piece. We're 10 years behind in the hiring, and we're 10 years ahead in the access to care.
Yeah.
And so you've got this mismatch, and it's great. The advertising is great. People are, I would say the stigma is less than it's ever been around seeking care. We just don't have the capacity to meet the demand.
Interesting. Okay. That's a great point. I didn't think about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you kind of see Pearl Health growing to? What's your vision of where this could be?
Well, one of the hopes is that we can be internationally known for exceptional care.
That's awesome.
During the pandemic and through all the difficulties that came with that, you remember the George Floyd incident. Mm-hmm. We became committed to something that we call uncomfortable conversations. And it's internally, we're looking at the ways in which racism in America continues to be a challenge, and the ways in which we can, at Pearl Health Clinic, impact that. And not just racism, all the isms that go along with that. We want to be at the forefront of addressing those concerns. And so we actually have and you asked me a list of questions, and I think I said I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So was Dr. Tana. So we have a sister company that is a nonprofit called University Study and Services Abroad.
Okay.
My colleague Colin Waters heads that up. And what we've done there, back in 2013, we started going to international destinations, because part of our responsibility as mental health clinicians is to be aware of our own biases, our own prejudices, and challenge them.
Yeah.
So we've taken teams to Malaysia, we've taken teams to Italy, to Hong Kong, to Mexico, and we've done service and learning opportunities for mental health professionals. And so when I talk about being internationally known for compassionate care, we've got the mechanisms and relationships in place, and the team that's dedicated to it. That's kind of our big 10-year vision, that we would be a place known for exceptional care the world around.
That's amazing that you have that in place, and that it's cool to hear that you guys understand that, because everybody has their own biases, and it's natural, but to go and like force or provide an opportunity for your colleagues and your counselors to go out and experience other cultures and kind of challenge those things, that's huge.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, probably aren't doing that same thing. So
I don't think so. And we think we're unique in that way. And yet it's something that, having my mentor been, like I said, a Hindu priest converted to Christianity, that certainly influenced the way I view the world as an extremely privileged white guy in East Idaho. And so the uncomfortable conversations are our way of keeping it at the forefront internally for people to, like you said, have access to both learning and then through our sister nonprofit service opportunities and mental health training and teaching in places that, in as much as we're behind in America, we're ahead of a lot of the rest of the world in addressing it. So yeah, those are fun little entrepreneurial things, and I love to travel. So it's a win-win for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So touching on your serial entrepreneurship, what are aside from Pearl Health Clinic, what are the other things that you're into right now, business-wise?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the number one thing for me is real estate investment, and that is it's a fun challenge. Certainly, it's been on the upswing the last few years.
Yeah,
but I think I said it earlier in the podcast. Education and home ownership were the things that changed the trajectory of my life, and so having been able to tap into the home equity as rates were coming down in 2008, and having survived that, I don't profess to know all the ins and the outs, but recognizing that you got to have money in the system to make it work. I'm a closet hip hop music fan, and I love Kanye's line, having money isn't everything, not having it is. And I think there's truth in that. As someone who grew up in poverty, you're always thinking, when I get there, and then once you get there, you got to have something to do with it.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Tana taught me a lot about real estate investment. I've done some stock market trading, and there's a little thrill in that, but you got to be careful.
Oh yeah.
I just started a Airbnb opportunity in Scottsdale, Arizona. Got one going with my sister at a resort town in Minnesota.
Oh wow.
So one of the things that I've really committed to and tried to emphasize in my entrepreneurship is sharing these ideas with my siblings. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and my staff at Pearl Health Clinic. And so whenever there's an opportunity to come forward with especially a real estate idea. That's got me connected in Texas, in Indiana, in Minnesota. So all these really neat opportunities that my siblings can also participate in and benefit from, I feel matches my beliefs and values about what I want to do with any resources that I have.
Absolutely. I think Alex Hormozy, I don't know if you listen to him at all, but
Say who again?
Alex Hormozy.
No.
He's big on YouTube and stuff.
Okay.
Big business guy, but I quote him a lot on the podcast.
Okay.
But he says, or no, this was Jim Rohn, but he said it's not a lack of resources, but a lack of knowledge and understanding for people.
I think that's a great insight because it is. I mean, once I became a business owner, understanding that the entire American economy is slanted towards business owners, it's incredible what you have access to and what you can participate in. I probably have just scratched the surface, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you to have found real estate. And I love that you also try to empower your family and show them, opportunities and help them understand. And then also you mentioned your colleagues and your coworkers.
Yeah.
That's something that I think is so important because I look at my team and my whole thing isn't to just teach these guys how to sell real estate. It's teach these guys how to build financial freedom and become wealthy so that they can spend the time doing what they want to be doing.
Sure. Yeah.
But a lot of teams, a lot of business owners don't look at their employees like that. They look at it as, how can I trap these guys into working for me forever?
Yeah.
When that shouldn't be the thing. The way that people are going to stay with you and want to grow with you is if you can help increase their knowledge and understanding and create more opportunities for them.
Yeah.
And so you're creating more opportunities when you bring in your coworkers to those real estate deals.
Yeah, and it's been a challenging labor environment the last couple of years, and we think we've done some pretty cool, creative things to retain. In fact, just yesterday we were in a planning session, and we ran our employee retention numbers. We're 97%, and that's something I'm incredibly proud of.
Oh yeah,
people can go throw a rock and get a better paying job somewhere else, and yet they stay, and they stay because of the mission, vision, and values, and we've communicated that through what we believe is a healthy leadership relationship with the people who work for us.
Yeah. People don't leave companies, they leave leaders.
Yeah.
So that speaks a lot on your leadership and what you've built. What's been your funnest real estate investment so far? Aside from the beautiful house you just bought in Scottsdale.
That was pretty darn fun. I'm heading down there tomorrow. Well, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an immediate answer of the most fun one.
What's one that's made you, or
probably
you've been most excited about?
The one that, excited and satisfied. Again, it goes back to my own personal story of growing up in, poverty. I was able to help my brother. I bought his home for him with cash, and it's nothing, it's modest.
Yeah.
It's that's probably one of my most rewarding stories to be able to do something like that. And he has since paid it off. So that to me has the potential of transformation for him and his children and his entire family. And so that if that's fun, that's definitely rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. And the transformation, helping when you can see that somebody had that transformational, either whether they made a connection or it finally clicked for them. That's like my favorite part about.
Absolutely. Because that changes the trajectory of their life.
Absolutely. Yeah. They could have been on a totally different thing, but you helped them you gave them that one piece that just took them off a little bit and they're going to live a different life because of it.
Let me tell you one of my worst business moves.
Yes, please.
So I got this bug in 2017, and one of my physicians had a friend who was doing some restaurant work in the Vegas area.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's cool. I got a little money. Let's see what the guy's about. I went down there and he cooked this meal for me, kind of showing me what he was into and what he was interested in. And it was a dingy 1-bedroom apartment, but I felt like it was kind of like, okay, this is like the beginning. This could be the genesis of something. And he was doing adaptogens, and we went and looked at a leased space and out just a couple miles off the strip. And so, we were into it. He wrote up this proposal. So I gave the guy $4,000, and I never saw a nickel of that money ever again. And so that was a tough one. You kind of have to know how much you're willing and able to lose.
Oh,
a couple years later, I think I emailed him and said, "Am I ever going to see that money?" And I haven't heard back from him.
Oh man, how did you get connected with him?
So it was a friend. So one of my physicians who worked for me at the time also had a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug, and she introduced me. I can't remember her connection to him,
Got
but
it.
I didn't know him from Adam. And so it was just a fun adventure at the time, and money that I guess I was apparently willing to lose.
Just yeah. You can't hit them all, right?
Right.
But some of those, it's you when you're doing the entrepreneur thing and you're making investment, you got money to invest. It's like sometimes you throw a little money at things that are really high risk because hey, if it does hit off, it could be a really good return. You just got to be okay if it doesn't, and you never see that money again.
Yeah. Yes.
What's your big why?
My faith is a big part of it. I want to be able to bless other people. I want to be generous the way I believe God has been generous to me. And really what's come to the forefront for me lately is like helping my family change the trajectory of their life. I think we've done a great job in the businesses of creating a sustainable model, which has freed me up to be able to look at my family and go, what are the ways that my positive experiences, the things that I've learned, can be a benefit to you all. My sister lives in Indianapolis, runs a cleaning business. I made an investment in her cleaning business. One of my sisters, we've got this Airbnb in a resort town in Minnesota. So I think those are some of the whys. I've got 2 wonderful kids. My wife is incredibly talented. So I feel like I've got my own great family who are very capable. Yeah. And so I'm looking around for other people to go, who can I invest in? Who can I commit to? And for me, it starts with my siblings and my family.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. What's the end goal for you?
I'm 44. If I by 50 can have the financial freedom to be, live, go, and do whatever I want with my sweetheart, hold off being a grandpa till I'm like 55, and then enjoy the rest of what life has, that feels like a pretty good next 40 years for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's when you really think about it, 50, you still got a lot of life.
Yeah.
So if you hit that by 50, it's
right.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. I just closed on a deal today. I got a new building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Here in Idaho Falls?
Yeah.
Where at?
My wife is telling me, is this the last one, or is this going to be the last one? It's for our clinic expansion. It's just off of Woodruff. We're currently in a leased space.
Okay.
And to get this building ready, we're going to need another year or so. But there's always something exciting going on. So I got that deal going, and if my wife gets her way, it'll be the last one.
Do you have like a cash flow number or a number that you're aiming for that you're like, this is where I'm going to be comfortable? And the reason I ask is one of my mentors, he talks a lot about, planning your wealth journey and planning your future. Mm-hmm. And he makes the comment, a lot of people spend more time planning their next vacation than they do planning their financial future. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I've been trying to focus more on is like, what's that number that I want to set for myself? Because so far it's just always been like, I want to do this income wise, and I want to do this, and I'm going to do this. And you just keep pushing. Have you put any thought into like where you want to be?
So I love that question. And part of the way I would answer that is I have developed a really great team of external advisors, lawyer, accountant. What I am missing is a good financial advisor. So I don't know that I have that number. What I've really been sensitive to, and again, I have a great partner. My wife and her low risk tolerance has encouraged me, and I've developed a habit of keeping my debt ratio very low. And so when I bought the company in 2017, I got the building and the practice. I aggressively paid down that debt. So by 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was in a great spot, both equity and cash wise, so that when those rates went up, then I had access to borrow if I wanted or if I needed to. So for me, it's about a debt to equity ratio that I can sleep well at night and know that the cash flow is going to cover all of my different interests.
That's awesome.
That's how I think about it. But, whoever listens to this, maybe there's a financial guy who could help me put together a more solid plan.
It's tough. Do you plan to, is your goal to sell out of the company, or do you plan to just continue to run that?
Ooh, that's a great question. And it's a great question because we have been looking at it internally. One of the things that, love him or hate him, about Dr. Tana is he did not have much of a transition plan. Had we not signed that buy-sell, everything would have ended up in his estate, and there was no clear direction or leadership.
Yeah.
So that that trauma, if you will, is really forcing me to, there's a couple factors. My dad died at 49 of a heart attack. I'm healthy, thank the Lord, but I'm 44. And so the closer I get to that age, the more I think about, okay, what is going to happen? And so internally, we've been looking at different ways to ensure the longevity of the practice. We don't have an answer to it yet. There's various things about ESOPs and things like that, and they can buy me out. I don't think my children have any interest in, and that's fine. They have their own careers. So we don't have a definitive plan, but it's certainly something we talk about on the regular as a group of leaders to ensure that the vision persists beyond me and anyone else.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, you've been running this since 2007, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
For those that are looking to start a business, like what would be your one piece of advice that you'd say that you've learned over the years that you'd want to share with somebody that's either looking to get into business or become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would maybe two keys, like be really honest about your own risk tolerance. Like you've got to figure that out, and you've got to, because you can destroy a lot of things in pursuit of something when you don't know the anxiety that you're undergoing as a business owner. So really knowing your own and get with somebody to help you figure that out, but also persist. There's going to be some ups and downs, and if you can really stay committed to what you think is best for you, your family, the business, the idea, you'll be able to weather some of those. They'll be hard, but know your risk tolerance and persist are probably the two things that have been keys for me.
Yeah. And I want to reflect on your journey. I mean, you basically started this in 2007. You said your when things really started taking off was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 10-year,
yeah,
it's a 10-year time frame.
Yeah.
That I think a lot of people don't realize, because somebody could look at you now and say, hey, you're 44.
Yeah.
You're crushing it. You're super successful. How did it all happen? Like, oh, he must have just gotten it at the right time or got lucky or did this. It's like, no, it was a journey that you stuck through.
Absolutely.
And several people may have quit during that 10-year period and been like, I'm going to go a different route. This wasn't what I thought it was, but you stuck it out, and you were able to see that exponential growth curve, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's something that I really strive to be sensitive to, both as a person and a leader. People see this snapshot of my life and they can fill in all the gaps they want. And I really try to do a good job of connecting the dots between all the effort that it took to get to where I am. And it could all be gone tomorrow. So I want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm not foolishly spending my resources, but I've been in those down points. And so, yeah, there's a longer arc than just what you see today. And I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor, but I'm also recognizing it took a long way to get here. Yeah,
absolutely. Was your wife on board when you started the company? Was she in favor of that? Just because I get a lot, there's people that want to be entrepreneurs, but some get backlash from their wife. So
sure.
Was she on board? And if not, how did you get her on board?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a wonderful partnership. She smooths out a lot of my rough edges. And I would say that she was on board, but I didn't always feel like she was on board. In some ways, I'm that dreamer, and she's unintentionally popping my balloons. So it took a lot of work on the relationship and communication skills for us to really feel like we were on the same page. But I can't ever remember a time when she was just like, we're not doing this. I think she brings she finished her master's in accounting during the pandemic.
Okay.
And so she brings a great vantage point that's realistic when all I want to do is just play and dream. And so she's good for me that way. And I think we've gotten to a point after 22 years where it's a good balance of challenging and dreaming together. And so to answer your question shortly, no, I think she's been a great cheerleader for me throughout my life, both in enthusiasm, but also in like, hey, let's be cautious here.
Do you guys talk about money together?
Absolutely.
Did you guys set early on like a wealth plan or where you guys wanted to be? Did you guys formulate goals?
Well, this is interesting too, because we come from two very different family backgrounds. And so I think if she had her way, we would have done that. But coming from poverty, it was kind of like, once you have it, spend it. So we had some rough lessons early in our marriage where we had very different ideas about what money meant, what it symbolizes. and really came together, I would say probably 10, 12 years into our marriage where we were really on the same page, having healthy conversations about what money means and what it doesn't mean.
Do you see that a lot? I mean, talking to people, I feel like it's a hard conversation for a lot of people to have.
It is.
But it can be one of the biggest stressors in a marriage.
Yeah. So one of my specialty within the clinic is couples counseling.
Okay.
And that crops up all the time. And so it's really important to help people learn how to communicate well about anything. And money is one of those topics. And so what I help people understand is that it's not just a thing, it's a symbol for a lot of people. And for some people, it symbolizes opportunity. For others, it symbolizes safety. And oftentimes those two people get married. Mm-hmm. And so being able to work through that and navigate that, it's what leads people into counseling sometimes. You know, you've got a spender and a saver. And it's also something that destroys relationships if they can't figure it out. So 100%. Yeah, I enjoy those types of conversations with couples and helping them work through it in a clinical perspective.
Yeah, I love that because I try to encourage all of my guys to like the first key to you guys getting, you know, a plan together is you need to have a conversation with your wife and get on the same page about what is your plan. Because also that it's like if you guys are on the same page about your plan, you're not going to be, you know, she's not going to be as upset if you're going to a showing at 8:00 at night or something to sell a house because you guys are on the same mission.
Yeah.
But when she's not in tune with your mission and you're on this weird mission, you're showing a house all the time, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. Especially when you're in this career where schedules are all over the place.
Sure. Yep. That's great advice.
So I love that you've touched on that, and it's so important to anybody out there. It's like that's the key, first key. It's like if you want to build some financial freedom, you need to get on the same page with your spouse.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to be able to drive the ship in the same direction if you're not.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. But anyway, what's any last kind of big takeaways that you want to kind of share with the guests of your journey? I like to, one thing I would love to touch on is there any piece of advice that you'd share with your younger self? Maybe that 12-year-old Zach or.
Yeah. I really think what was one of the most important elements in my trajectory was being willing to be mentored. That humility that comes along with failure and being willing to learn from it. I think a humble person can learn to do almost anything and make money doing it. And so a willingness to learn is a really critical piece. If you find the right mentor, sit at their feet, listen to their wisdom, get connected, trust the relationship, and grow from it.
Yeah, trust the process.
There you go.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they seek a mentor thinking that their life's going to change instantly. But again, it's a process. It's going to take time.
For sure.
So, well, Zach, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Sure.
It truly is incredible to kind of see what you've done, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Pearl Health Clinic. I've heard rumors that maybe you guys go down to Arizona, build an office there. I don't know.
We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be against it, that's for sure.
I know. Eventually, we're going to try to figure out how to get a real estate team down there because my wife does
Yeah.
not want to be here in the winters.
It was a long winter.
It was. So anybody, I do want to share with people that maybe are out there that are looking to get counseling or talk to somebody about mental health. What's the best way for them to get connected with you in your guys' office?
Sure, yeah. First of all, like every clinic, we've got amazing clinicians, and unfortunately, we've got some wait lists. And so be prepared for that as a reality, but we're doing our best to keep up with it. Our website, pearlhealth.org, there's a client intake form there. We try to do a really good job of turning around and contacting people right away. That is the best way, pearlhealth.org.
Okay, pearlhealth.org. So if you guys are looking, there might be a wait list, but get on there, because even if you do have to wait a little bit, it's better than not getting anything done. So cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Zach. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, great stuff.
Until next time, guys. Catch you later.
Don't listen to people who lose or you'll do the same. Stop talking to people who don't give a what you saying. Stop spending your money on weed, go hop on a plane. Stop pointing the finger and start taking some of the blame. Let me put you on game. Control your emotions, most of the time it's really not worth it. Don't be ashamed and beat yourself up for not being perfect.